After our family dinner, I checked my account and it was empty. My $50,000 had completely disappeared. The phone screen showed a balance that chilled me to the bone. 0 cents. 40 years of work, sacrifice, and saving every penny vanished in a single night. My son, Mark Harrison, laughed from my own sofa. A laugh I had never heard before, cruel and ruthless. "We needed this more than you, Mom," he said with a smile I didn't recognize. "Old folks like you don't need that much money anyway." His wife, Sarah Reynolds, nodded from beside him with that calculating expression that had always made me uneasy. It's better off in the hands of people who are actually going to use it. I took a deep breath, feeling a tremor take over my hands. I picked up my purse and looked at them with a calm that surprised even myself. "Then you won't care about what comes next," I murmured. They kept laughing as if my words were a joke. But at that precise moment, a thunderous crash shook the entire house. The front door burst open. To understand how I got to this moment, I need to go back a few hours. It all started that morning when Mark called me after 3 months of complete silence. His voice sounded different, softer, almost regretful. "Mom, Sarah and I want to invite you to dinner tonight at your place. We'll cook. You just relax. It's time to fix things between us." After months of fighting over his father's inheritance, after his shouts demanding my money because he deserved it, those words sounded like heavenly music to me. My mother's heart filled with hope. Perhaps my son had finally reflected on all the pain he had caused. I spent the entire afternoon getting ready, something I hadn't done since my husband's funeral. I put on the olive green dress that Mark loved so much when he was a child, the one he always said made me look like a princess. I searched my jewelry box for the pearl necklace my late husband gave me for our 20th anniversary. Each pearl represented a year of happy marriage, of building together the future that Mark now seemed to want to destroy. As I brushed my hair in front of the mirror, I remembered the words my mother told me before she died. "Marlene, children sometimes get lost along the way, but true love always brings them back home." Those words gave me strength during the 3 darkest months of my life, when my own son threatened to cut off contact with my grandchildren if I didn't hand over my money. They arrived promptly at 6 p.m. Mark carried flowers, white lilies, my favorites. Sarah carried a bag full of ingredients for my favorite dish, curry chicken with jasmine rice. Everything seemed perfect, just like the old days when Mark visited me every Sunday with his family. During dinner, Mark told me about his new business project, about how he wanted to expand his small construction company. His eyes shone with the passion I remembered from when he was young and dreamed of being an architect. Sarah, for the first time in months, asked about my health, about my friends from the knitting club. She even complimented my new hair color. "Mom," Mark said to me as I served dessert, "I'm so sorry for everything that happened these past few months. I know I was very hard on you. It's just that business is bad. We have so many debts, and when Dad died, I thought you could help us more." His eyes filled with tears that seemed so real, my heart completely melted. "My son," I said, taking his hand, "your father and I saved that money for our golden years, but if you really need it, we can talk about a loan in a fair way for everyone." The smile he gave me confirmed that I had made the right decision. My family was healing. It was after dessert that everything changed. Mark and Sarah exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret at the time, but which I now understand perfectly. It was the look of 2 predators about to attack their prey. Mark cleared his throat and pulled his phone from his pocket. "Mom, before we talk about the loan, there's something you need to do for us," he said with a voice that no longer sounded pleading, but demanding. "I need you to transfer the money tonight. Everything is urgent." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The sweetness of a few minutes ago had evaporated like smoke. "Mark, son, I don't understand the rush. We can go to the bank tomorrow, talk to the manager, do things properly." "No, Mom," Sarah interrupted with a smile that no longer reached her eyes. "It has to be now. Tonight we have an investment opportunity that can't wait another day." She stood up from the table and approached me with her phone in her hand. "You have the bank app on your phone, right? It's very easy, just a few clicks and done." My maternal instinct began to fight against my intuition. Something wasn't right. But Mark was my son. For 40 years, he had been my pride, my joy. The child who ran to hug me when I got home from work. The young man who promised to take care of me when his father was gone. How could I distrust him now? "It's just that $50,000 is a lot of money, Mark," I said with a trembling voice. "Your father and I took decades to save that amount. I worked double shifts at the laundry, cleaned offices on weekends. I sold my engagement ring when you had that medical emergency as a child. That money represents a lifetime of sacrifices." Mark sighed impatiently and sat next to me on the sofa. He took my hands, but his touch no longer comforted me as before. "Mom, don't you trust me? I'm your son. I would never hurt you. Besides," his voice hardened slightly, "technically part of that money should be mine from Dad's inheritance." There was the real reason for this dinner, for the flowers, for the fake tears. Mark had never come to reconcile with me. He had come to finish the job he started 3 months ago when he first demanded my money. "Mark, we've already talked about this," I said, trying to stay calm. "Your father left everything to me because he knew I would manage it well. When I die, you and David will inherit everything equally, but while I'm alive, that money is mine." Mark's mask fell completely. He jumped to his feet and began to pace back and forth in my small living room. "I can't wait for you to die, Mom. I need the money now. My business is going bankrupt. I'm up to my neck in debt. They're going to foreclose on my house. Don't you understand that your own son needs you?" Sarah came up behind him and put her hand on my shoulder. Her touch made me shiver. "Marlene, let's be realistic. You're 65 years old. What do you need so much money for? You've paid off your house. You've raised your children. It's time for you to help the next generation." "Besides," Mark added, stopping in front of me, "if you don't help us now, I won't be able to keep bringing the grandchildren to visit you. Sarah thinks you're not a good influence on them with all these selfish attitudes." The emotional blackmail hit me like a slap. My grandchildren, little Liam and Lily, were the light of my eyes. The threat of never seeing them again broke my heart, but something inside me, a voice that sounded very much like my late husband's, whispered not to give in. "All right," I finally murmured, "but not all of it. I can transfer $5,000 tonight, and the rest when you show me a real business plan, with numbers, with guarantees." Mark and Sarah looked at each other again. This time the silent communication was clear. "That's not enough, Mom," Mark said with a dangerously calm voice. "It's either the $50,000 tonight, or tomorrow I'm going to a lawyer to contest Dad's will. I have witnesses who can testify that he wasn't in his right mind when he made it, that you influenced him to leave everything to you." My world reeled. My own son was threatening me with a legal battle, with lies about his father. "Mark, you know that's not true. Your father was perfectly lucid until the end." "The judges won't know that," Sarah interjected with a cruel smile. "And legal processes are long and expensive. In the end, all your money will go to lawyers. It's better if you give it to us now, amicably." I felt the walls of my own house closing in on me. These two predators had planned everything carefully. The romantic dinner, the apologies, the fake tears. Everything had been an elaborate play to lead me exactly to this moment of vulnerability. I remembered then the words my husband told me on his deathbed. "Marlene, there are wolves who come in sheep's clothing, even among family. Protect yourself, my love. Protect what we have built." At that moment, I thought he was referring to external scammers. I never imagined he was referring to our own son. "What if I don't accept?" I asked with a voice I barely recognized as my own. "What if I refuse to give you my money?" Mark came so close that I could feel his breath on my face. "Then you're going to lose much more than money, Mom. You're going to lose your family, your grandchildren, your reputation. I can make the whole family think you've become a crazy, selfish old woman, that you're mentally ill. Your brother, David, already suspects your strange behavior," Sarah added, lying shamelessly. "We've told him how you've been acting lately. He also thinks it's better for the money to be in younger hands." Lies. I knew David, my younger son, the honest lawyer who had turned out just like his father. He would never agree to this, but the manipulation was so elaborate, so cruel, that for a moment I doubted everything and everyone. With trembling hands, I took my phone out of my purse. Mark and Sarah smiled victoriously. "I knew you'd understand, Mom," he said with false sweetness. "This is best for everyone." I opened the banking app, entered my password, and for a moment I was paralyzed, looking at the balance. $50,000 exactly, the fruit of a lifetime of honest work. I looked at Mark and Sarah, who watched me like vultures waiting for carrion. The screen glowed in my hands as they leaned in to supervise every movement. "Put my full name, Mark Harrison," my son dictated to me, "and the account I'm going to give you now." He began to recite a series of numbers that Sarah had written down on her phone. "Is this your account, Mark?" I asked, feeling that something was off. "Of course, Mom, it's my business account. I need it to make the investment immediately," he replied impatiently. But I noticed he avoided my gaze, something he did since he was a child when he lied. My fingers moved slowly over the screen. Every number I entered felt like a betrayal of my own life. But then, just as I was about to confirm the transfer, something extraordinary happened, and then I did something that surprised even myself. I pretended to complete the transfer. My fingers moved over the screen as if I were following the instructions, but in reality, I was just navigating through the menu options without confirming anything. Mark and Sarah were watching the screen so intently that they didn't notice my movements were purely theatrical. "Done," I murmured, closing the app quickly. "It's all done." Mark jumped with excitement and hugged me with a force that left me breathless. "I knew I could count on you, Mom. You're the best mother in the world." His joy seemed so genuine that for a moment I almost convinced myself that I had done the right thing. Sarah came over to kiss me on the cheek. "Thank you, Marlene. Seriously, this is going to change our lives forever." Her smile had something sinister that gave me goosebumps. "Now," Mark said, rubbing his hands, "I think we can go. I have to be at the bank very early tomorrow to move the money." He walked towards the door with hurried steps, as if he was eager to escape before I realized what had really happened. "Are you leaving already?" I asked sweetly. "I thought we could have coffee, talk more about the family, about the grandchildren." "Another day, Mom," Mark replied without turning to look at me. "We're very tired, and tomorrow will be a very busy day." Sarah already had her coat on and was checking her phone with a smile she couldn't hide. I accompanied them to the door, feigning the biggest smile of my life. "Have a beautiful night," I told them as I watched them walk away towards their car. Mark didn't even say goodbye with a kiss as he used to do since he was a child. As soon as I closed the door, I ran to my bedroom and pulled the phone from my nightstand drawer. It was my old phone, the one I had used for years before buying the new one, but it still had the bank app installed with my account active. With trembling fingers, I entered my password and checked the balance. $50,000, intact. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. The deception had worked. Mark and Sarah had fallen into my trap, believing they had managed to rob me, when in reality, they hadn't gotten a single penny. But my relief was short-lived because I knew that when they realized the transfer had never been processed, they would return, and next time they wouldn't be so gentle. I sat on my bed with trembling hands, holding the phone as if it were a lifeline. What should I do now? Call the police? Tell David? Change my banking passwords and hope for the best? But before I could make any decision, I heard the sound of a car braking sharply in my driveway. Then, violent banging, agitated voices, furious footsteps approaching my door. They had discovered my deception. The banging on the door began immediately so hard that the whole house vibrated. "Mom, open this door right now!" Mark's voice sounded unrecognizable, filled with a rage I had never heard before. "We know you lied to us," Sarah shouted from outside. "The money didn't reach the account. Don't be ridiculous and open up at once." I curled up in my bed, paralyzed by terror. This wasn't my son yelling outside. This was a furious beast that had lost all trace of humanity. The banging intensified, and I could hear them trying to force the lock. "Marlene, I'm giving you 3 seconds to open this door, or I'm going to kick it down." Mark was completely out of control. 1, 2. He didn't wait for 3. The sound of something hitting the door hard made me jump. He was using his body as a battering ram, trying to knock down the main entrance of the house where I had raised him with love. I took my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, but before I could speak, I heard the sound of glass breaking. They had broken the kitchen window. "I'm going to teach you not to mess with me," Mark yelled from inside my own house. His heavy footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as he approached my room. "Give me the bank passwords right now, or this is going to get very ugly." Sarah had come in behind him, and I could hear them rummaging through my things in the living room. "Look for her purse. The cards must be there." Her voice had become hysterical, like someone who had completely lost control. I locked myself in my bathroom and put the deadbolt on, though I knew such a thin door wouldn't protect me for long. With the phone pressed to my ear, I whispered my address to the emergency operator. "Please, come quickly," I murmured. "My son is trying to rob me and is acting violently." The banging on my bedroom door then began. Mark had found my refuge. "Mom, get out of there immediately. Don't make me do something I'll regret." "Mark, please," I cried from the bathroom. This isn't you. Stop before you do something terrible." "You turned me into this," he replied with a voice full of venom. "With your selfishness, with your greed. That money should be mine. Dad would have wanted me to have it." I heard him start kicking my bedroom door. The wood creaked with each blow. Sarah encouraged him from behind. "Harder, you almost have it." At that moment, in the darkness of my bathroom, with my son trying to knock down doors to rob me, I understood something fundamental. The Mark I had raised, the sweet boy who drew pictures for Mother's Day, had died long ago. In his place was a stranger with his face, but with a completely rotten heart. My bedroom door burst open with a crash that made me scream. Footsteps approached the bathroom where I was hiding. "Last chance, Mom," Mark said, with a deathly calm voice. "Come out nicely and give me access to your account, or I'm going to have to drag you out." "No," I whispered, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "I'm not giving you my money, Mark, not this way." The silence that followed was more terrifying than all his shouts combined. Then I heard him walk away, his footsteps heading towards the kitchen. Had he given up? Had he come to his senses? But seconds later, I understood where he had gone when I heard him return. His steps sounded different, heavier, and then I knew exactly what he had gone to get. "Mom," he said from the other side of the bathroom door, with a calm that chilled me to the bone. "I hope you reconsider your decision, because I just brought the hammer from the garage." The first blow of the hammer against the bathroom door echoed like thunder in my ears. The wood splintered immediately, creating a crack that allowed me to see Mark's crazed eye on the other side. There was no trace of the child I once kissed goodnight every night. "Mark, stop!" I screamed with all the strength I had left. "The police are on their way." "Let them come," he roared as he delivered another hammer blow that widened the hole. "By the time they get here, I'll have what's mine." Sarah laughed hysterically from my bedroom, seemingly enjoying the spectacle of watching her husband destroy his own mother's house. I closed my eyes and curled up in the farthest corner of the bathroom, holding my phone against my chest as if it were a protective amulet. I thought of my husband, of how he would have handled this situation. He always was stronger than me, more determined. "Give me strength, my love," I whispered. "Help me survive this." The third blow opened the door enough for Mark to reach in and grab the latch. His fingers fumbled for the lock as I pressed myself against the back wall, trembling like a leaf in the storm. "I almost have it," he shouted to Sarah. "Look for something to tie her up. We can't let her escape." "Tie me up." The word hit me like a slap. My own son was planning to tie me up like a criminal, like an animal. The level of degradation he had reached took my breath away. When he finally managed to open the latch, the door swung wide open, and Mark appeared before me like an apparition from hell. His face was red with fury, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes shone with a madness I had never seen before. The hammer still hung from his right hand. "Finally," he murmured with a twisted smile. "Now we're going to do this the easy way, Mom. You're going to sit in that chair," he pointed towards my room, "and you're going to transfer every penny from that account to mine. No tricks, no lies, no games." "I'm not going to do it," I said with a voice that surprised me with its firmness. "You can hit me, you can tie me up, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to reward this madness by giving you my money." Mark raised the hammer, and for a moment I thought he was really going to hit me. My heart completely stopped, but instead of attacking me, he turned and unleashed all his fury against the bathroom mirror. The glass shattered, falling like diamond rain onto the tiled floor. "Look what you're making me do," he cried. "All of this is your fault. If you were a normal mother, if you really loved us, we wouldn't have to go to these extremes." Sarah appeared behind him, carrying the sheets from my bed. "Here's something to tie her with," she said, with a coldness that gave me goosebumps. I looked in her purse and found the bank cards. "We just need her to tell us the security numbers." They grabbed me between them and dragged me towards my desk chair. My legs barely supported me, but my mind was strangely clear. As Mark pushed me to sit down, I could hear the distant sound of sirens approaching. The police were on their way, but would they arrive in time? "Do you hear that?" I said to them with a smile that came from my soul. "They're coming for you." Mark looked out the broken window of my room and cursed loudly. "Damn it! It's like 5 patrol cars." He turned to me, his eyes bloodshot. "This is your fault. You've ruined our lives." "No," I replied, as Sarah tried to tie my hands with the sheets. "You ruined yourselves when you decided to become thieves." The sirens were getting closer and closer. Mark ran back and forth like a caged animal, not knowing what to do. "We have to get out of here," he shouted to Sarah through the back window. But Sarah had a different idea. She approached me with my own phone in her hand. "5 minutes," she said in a threatening voice. "You give us 5 minutes to make the transfer, or I tell the police that all of this was a family misunderstanding, that you invited us to dinner and then went crazy and attacked us. And when the police leave," Mark added, "we'll come back to finish what we started. But next time, it won't be so easy for you." The sound of car doors closing came from outside, men's voices shouting orders, footsteps running towards my house. Mark and Sarah looked at each other in panic, realizing their time had run out. "Police! Open the door!" The shout came from the main living room. Mark ran towards it, probably thinking of escaping, but returned immediately with a defeated look on his face. "They've surrounded the house," he murmured. "There's no way out." At that moment, a deafening crash was heard from the main entrance. My front door burst open with such force that it hit the wall. Heavy footsteps ran through the house as authoritative voices shouted, "Police! Hands up! Everyone on the ground!" Mark and Sarah stood petrified in my room like deer in headlights. The hammer still hung from Mark's hand, the sheets were still in Sarah's hands, and I remained tied to the chair as living evidence of what they had been doing. "Here!" I shouted with all the strength I had left. "We're in the master bedroom." The footsteps immediately headed towards us. In seconds, 3 police officers appeared at the entrance to my room with their weapons drawn. The scene they found left no doubt about what had been happening. "Drop everything and get on your knees," ordered the officer who seemed to be in charge. "Hands behind your head." Mark dropped the hammer with a metallic clang that resonated in the silence. Sarah dropped the sheets as if they burned. Both knelt slowly with their hands behind their heads as the officers approached with handcuffs ready. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" a female officer asked me as she cut the sheets that tied me to the chair. Her hands were gentle but firm, exactly what I needed at that moment. "Not physically," I replied with a trembling voice, "but they tried to steal my money. They threatened me, broke into my house, tried to force me to transfer $50,000. As the other officers handcuffed Mark and Sarah, I could see how the reality of what they had done began to hit them. Mark looked at me with an expression that mixed regret and resentment, as if he still believed I was to blame for his situation. "Mom," he said as they lifted him from the floor, "please, Don't do this. I'm your son. Think about the grandchildren, about the family." "I am thinking about the family," I replied with a calm that surprised me. "That's why I won't allow you to become something your father would never have recognized." Sarah tried a different tactic. "Officer," she shouted at the police officer who was handcuffing her, "she invited us to dinner. This is all a misunderstanding. My mother-in-law has mental problems." But the evidence spoke for itself. The broken window, the shattered door, the hammer on the floor, me tied to a chair with sheets. There was no way to explain that scene as a family misunderstanding. As the officers led Mark and Sarah towards the patrol cars, one of them stayed with me to take my statement. He was an older man, probably my son's age, with kind eyes that momentarily reminded me of the Mark I once knew. "Ma'am, I know this must be very difficult for you," he said gently. "Pressing charges against a family member is never easy. Are you sure you want to proceed?" I looked towards the window where I could see Mark being put into the back of a patrol car. For a moment, our eyes met through the glass. In his, I saw a silent plea, a last attempt at emotional manipulation. He expected me to give in, for my maternal instinct to make me drop the charges, but I also saw something else in that look. I saw years of resentment, of greed, of feeling entitled to something that didn't belong to him. I saw a man who had been capable of threatening and terrorizing his own mother for money, and I knew that if I didn't take a firm stand now, this nightmare would repeat itself again and again. "Yes," I told the officer firmly, "I want to proceed with all possible charges." 3 hours later, my house was finally silent. The police had left. The technician who came to take photographs of the evidence had finished his work, and I found myself alone in the midst of the disaster that was left of my home. The broken glass crunched under my feet as I walked through the room, observing the damage my own son had caused. The bathroom mirror was completely shattered. The door had a fist-sized hole where Mark had hit it with the hammer. My desk was overturned with papers scattered all over the room where Sarah had desperately searched for my bank documents. It was as if a tornado had passed through my life. I sat on my bed, which still had the torn sheets that had been used to try to tie me up, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to cry. Not tears of fear or pain, but tears of grief. I cried for the son I had lost, for the sweet boy who once built sandcastles with me on the beach, for the young man who promised me he would always take care of me. The phone rang, interrupting my moment of mourning. It was David, my youngest son. "Mom, I just heard what happened. I'm on my way." His voice sounded agitated, worried. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, son," I replied, though my voice broke a little. "Physically, I'm fine. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch anything. Don't clean anything. I want to see exactly what they did." He stopped, probably remembering he was talking about his brother. When David arrived, the first thing he did was hug me so tightly I thought he would break my ribs. He was taller than Mark, more like his father in every way, but when he let go and saw the state of the house, his expression completely changed. "My God," he murmured, looking around the room. "This looks like a war zone. Mark really did all this?" I told him everything from the morning call to the moment the police took his brother away in handcuffs. David listened in silence, his jaw tightening more and more until I finished my story. "Mom, there's something I have to tell you," he finally said. "Mark came to see me 2 weeks ago. He asked me to help him get a lawyer to contest Dad's will. When I told him no, he got furious. He threatened to cut off contact with the grandchildren if I didn't support him. Why didn't you tell me anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Because I thought I could reason with him. I thought he would eventually come to his senses." David sat next to me and took my hands. "I was wrong, Mom. I should have warned you. I should have been here to protect you." "It's not your fault, son. Mark made his own choices." David stood up and began to walk around the room, examining every detail of the destruction. "As your lawyer," he said in a professional voice, "I recommend that we file a restraining order immediately. And as your son, I tell you never to let that crazy man get near you again." "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" I asked in a small voice, for having called the police on my own son. David stopped and looked at me with an expression that reminded me so much of his father that my heart ached. "Mom, you didn't call the police on your son. You called the police on a criminal who happens to share your blood. There's a huge difference." That night, David insisted on staying with me. We installed temporary alarms on all the windows and doors, and he slept on the living room sofa with a baseball bat next to him. I couldn't sleep at all. Every noise startled me. Every shadow moving past the window made me jump. At 3 a.m, I got up and went to the kitchen to make some tea. While I waited for the water to boil, I found an old photo stuck to the refrigerator. It was a picture of Mark at 8 years old, smiling with missing front teeth, hugging his younger brother after winning a youth soccer game. They looked so happy, so innocent. "Can't sleep?" David appeared at the kitchen entrance with disheveled hair and worried eyes. "I keep thinking about him," I admitted. "About how we got to this point where I went wrong as a mother." David approached and gently took the photo from my hands. "Mom, you raised 2 children with the same values, the same love, the same opportunities. One of us chose to be a lawyer and protect people. The other chose to threaten his own mother for money. That has nothing to do with you." "But he's my son, David. For 40 years he was my pride, my joy. And for the past few months he's been your torment," he interrupted firmly. "Mom, the Mark you love, the sweet boy in this photo, died a long time ago. What came here last night was a stranger who shares his physical characteristics, but not his soul." 2 days later, I received a call from the detective in charge of the case. Mark and Sarah had been formally charged with attempted robbery, breaking and entering, destruction of private property, and threats against an elderly adult. Bail had been set at $50,000 each. $50,000, I repeated ironically, exactly the amount they tried to steal from me. "That's correct, ma'am. And is there anything else?" the detective continued. "During the interrogation, we discovered that your daughter-in-law had been planning this for months. She had a notebook with details about your habits, your schedule. She had even investigated how to access your bank accounts." The revelation hit me like a slap. Sarah had been hunting me like prey for months, studying me, waiting for the perfect moment to attack, and she had used my own son as her weapon. "We also found that they have gambling debts of over $200,000, the detective added. "Your son owes money to very dangerous people. That would explain the desperation." After hanging up, I sat in my repaired living room and tried to process all this information. Mark had not only planned to rob me, but he had been living a double life that I knew nothing about. Gambling debts, threats, desperation. How long had he been lying about his real life? That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole was an elderly woman I didn't recognize, elegantly dressed with flowers in her hands. David, who had come to have lunch with me, opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Marlene," the woman asked in a gentle voice, "I'm Eleanor, Sarah's mother. I came to apologize for what my daughter did to you." David and I exchanged surprised glances. We invited her in, and Eleanor sat on the edge of the sofa, clearly nervous. "Mrs. Marlene, I didn't know anything about Sarah's plans until the police arrested her," she began with tears in her eyes. "When they told me what she had done, I couldn't believe it. I raised that girl to be better than this." "Did you know about the gambling debts?" David asked directly. Eleanor nodded, ashamed. "Sarah borrowed money from me several times in recent months. She always had a different excuse. House repairs, medical expenses, problems with Mark's business. Never suspected it was for gambling. And now she's in jail," I murmured, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. "She and Mark can't make bail," Eleanor continued. "And honestly, Mrs. Marlene, I think it's better if they stay there. They need time to reflect on what they did. They need real consequences." Eleanor handed me the flowers and an envelope. "This is a check to cover the damages to your house. I know it doesn't make up for the trauma they caused you, but it's the least I can do." After Eleanor left, I opened the envelope. The check was for $10,000, more than enough to repair all the damage. But what struck me most was the note that came with it. "Mrs. Marlene, you did the right thing by calling the police. Sometimes true love means saying no when someone is destroying their own life. Thank you for being stronger than me." That night, for the first time since the incident, I managed to sleep soundly. Not because I had forgotten what happened, but because I finally understood something fundamental. I hadn't lost a son that night. I had recovered my dignity, my security, and my self-respect. A week after the arrest, I received a call that would change everything again. It was Mark's public defender, a young woman named Patricia Stone, who sounded exhausted on the phone. "Mrs. Marlene, your son wants to talk to you. He's been asking for a visit since he was arrested. He says he has something very important to tell you, something that could change your perspective on everything that happened." "I don't want to see him," I replied immediately. The mere idea of being in the same room as Mark caused me anxiety. "I perfectly understand your position," Patricia continued, "but as his lawyer, I must inform you that your son claims to have information about death threats he has received. He says the people he owes money to have threatened to hurt his family if he doesn't pay soon." Those words chilled me to the bone. Is he referring to me? To the grandchildren? He didn't specify, but he mentioned that his urgency to get the money wasn't just greed. It was survival. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. It was possible that Mark had been desperate, not only out of avarice, but out of real fear. There were dangerous people threatening my family. I immediately called David, who arrived at my house in record time. When I told him about the lawyer's call, his expression became serious. "Mom, even if that were true, it doesn't justify what he did to you. No external threat justifies him trying to rob and terrorize you that way." "But David, what if the grandchildren are in danger? What if those people go after them because Mark can't pay?" David thought for a moment. "All right, we'll go see him, but on my terms as your lawyer. And if this turns out to be another manipulation of his, it will be the last time we listen to him." 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a cold jail visiting room, waiting to see my son for the first time since he was taken away in handcuffs. David was by my side with his briefcase full of legal documents and an audio recorder. When Mark entered the room, I barely recognized him. He had lost weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his inmate uniform was too big for him. But what struck me most was the expression in his eyes. There was no longer arrogance or resentment, only pure fear. "Mom," he whispered, sitting in front of us. "Thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it." "Speak," David told him coldly. "You have 10 minutes. Mark took a deep breath and began his story. 6 months ago, Sarah convinced me to go to a casino on the tribal reservation. She said it was just for fun, that we would only bet $50 each. His hands trembled as he spoke. "But the place had something, Mom. It was like a drug. The more I lost, the more I wanted to bet to get back what I lost." "How much did you lose exactly?" David asked, taking notes. "At first it was $10,000, then 20, then 50. Every time I lost, the casino's loan sharks offered me more credit. They said it was easy, that I could pay it back whenever I wanted." Mark covered his face with his hands. By the time I realized what had happened, I owed $200,000. "And the threats?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to hear the answer. "They started 2 months ago. First, they were phone calls. Then they appeared at my work, then at the children's school." Mark's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, they took photos of Liam and Lily leaving school. They told me that if I didn't pay in a month, they would collect in other ways." I felt like the world was crashing down on me. My grandchildren, my innocent babies, had been in danger, and I had no idea. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" I asked in a broken voice. "Why didn't you explain the situation to me from the beginning?" "Because I was afraid you would say no," he admitted. "And because Sarah convinced me that it was better to take it without asking. She said that way you wouldn't feel responsible if something bad happened." David leaned forward. "Mark, these people know where Mom lives. They know who she is." "I don't know," Mark replied with panic in his voice. "They know I have family, but I'm not sure if they know specific names or addresses. And now that you're in jail, what about the threats? Yesterday I received a message. Mark took a crumpled paper from his pocket. Another prisoner who has contacts outside passed it to me. It says that if I didn't pay in 2 weeks, they're going to go after my family to send a message. David read the paper, and his expression hardened even more. This seems authentic. The names they mention are known in the world of illegal loans. I sat in silence, processing all this information. On one hand, I was beginning to understand Mark's desperation. On the other hand, he had chosen the wrong path to solve his problem. Instead of asking for help honestly, he had decided to rob and terrorize me. "Mark," I finally said, "although I understand your fear, I cannot forgive the way you handled this. You could have explained the situation to me from the beginning. You could have asked for help instead of trying to rob me." "I know, Mom, I know, and I regret it every second. But now my regret doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you are in danger because of me." David closed his briefcase. "What exactly do you want us to do, Mark?" "I want Mom to leave town for a while, to get away until this is resolved, and I want someone to protect the children." Mark looked directly into my eyes. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I did, but please protect yourself. These people have no scruples." After the visit, David and I went directly to the police station to report the threats. The detective in charge of the case listened to us carefully and took copies of all the evidence Mark had provided us. "Mrs. Marlene," the detective told me, "we are going to investigate these threats immediately. But in the meantime, I recommend you take extra precautions, change your routines, avoid being alone, consider staying somewhere else temporarily." "And my grandchildren?" I asked with my heart in my throat. "We've already sent patrols to the school to talk to the principals. We're also going to coordinate with Child Protective Services to ensure the children are safe while this is resolved." That night, in my repaired house, which no longer felt safe, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I called my sister, Brenda Williams, who lived in another state. "Brenda, I need to stay with you for a while," I told her without preamble. "Of course, sister. What's going on?" I told her the whole story, from the attempted robbery to the loan shark's threats. Brenda listened in silence until I finished. "Come immediately," she told me firmly. "Tomorrow I'll come pick you up." "I can't run away from my own life," I protested. "This is my house, my city, my world." "None of that is worth your life, Marlene. Come here, take the time you need to heal, and let the police and David handle all of this from there." As I packed my suitcase that night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because I would finally be away from danger, but sadness because I was leaving behind the life I had built for 65 years. I found the pearl necklace in my jewelry box, the same one I had worn the night of the fateful dinner. I held it up to the light and thought of all the times my husband had told me I was beautiful when I wore it. I decided to take it with me. No matter where I went, no matter what happened, those pearls would remain a symbol of the happy years that no one could take away from me. The next morning, David drove me to the airport. In the car, he handed me a new phone with a number only he knew. "Anything you need, Mom, anything at all. I'll take care of all the legal stuff here, the grandchildren, the investigation. You just worry about being safe and healing." As the plane took off, I watched my city grow smaller and smaller beneath me. 65 years of life became a dot on the map, but for the first time in months, I took a deep breath without feeling fear. The first chapter of my new life was beginning, and this time I would have complete control over how it was written. Brenda's house in Arizona was everything mine wasn't at that moment. Quiet, safe, full of natural light, and surrounded by a garden that looked like an oasis in the desert. My sister welcomed me with open arms and without asking uncomfortable questions. She simply settled me into the guest room and told me, "Stay as long as you need. No one will hurt you here." The first few days were the hardest. Every noise startled me, every phone call made me nervous. Every car that passed by the street made me run to the window to make sure it wasn't them. Brenda watched me with concern, but respected my space, understanding that I needed time to process everything I had experienced. A week after my arrival, David called me with news that left me speechless. "Mom, they arrested 3 members of the criminal organization that was threatening Mark. They found them in possession of illegal weapons and drugs. It seems that the investigation of your case led them to discover a much larger operation." "Does that mean I'm safe?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Not completely yet. There are more people involved, and we don't know if anyone else might come for Mark's debt, but it's a big breakthrough." David paused. "Is there anything else, Mom?" "Mark wants to testify against them. He's willing to cooperate completely with the prosecution in exchange for protection for the family." The news generated mixed feelings in me. On one hand, I was relieved to know that Mark was finally doing the right thing. On the other hand, I was worried that cooperating with the authorities could put him in even more danger. "And the grandchildren?" I asked. "Social services have them under temporary protection. They're living with Sarah's parents for now, but they're safe. Liam asks about you constantly." That information broke my heart. My 8-year-old grandson probably didn't understand why his dad was in jail, why his mom was also arrested, and why his grandma had disappeared from their lives. After hanging up with David, I sat in Brenda's garden to reflect on everything that had happened. The desert sun warmed my face as I watched hummingbirds approach the feeders my sister had hanging from the trees. There was something hypnotic in their dance, something that deeply calmed me. "What are you thinking about?" Brenda asked, appearing with 2 cups of iced tea. "About how I got here," I replied, taking the cup. "A month ago, I had a normal life. I was a grandma who knitted sweaters for her grandchildren and cooked for family dinners. Now I'm a refugee in my sister's house, fleeing from criminals who want to hurt me for my son's debts." Brenda sat next to me in silence for a moment. "You know, Marlene, sometimes life puts us in situations we never imagined to teach us something important about ourselves. And what am I supposed to learn from this? That you're much stronger than you thought, that you can survive anything, and that you deserve a life where no one treats you like Mark did." That afternoon, Brenda convinced me to accompany her to her yoga group for seniors. I had never done yoga in my life, but she said it would help calm my mind. The group met in a local park under the shade of enormous mesquite trees. The other women in the group welcomed me with a warmth I didn't expect. They were women my age, some widows like me, others divorced, some who had simply decided to live alone in their golden years. All had stories of overcoming adversity, of difficult moments they had managed to get through. "The first time I came here," a woman named Rose Miller told me, "I had just discovered that my husband of 30 years had been cheating on me with his secretary. I thought my life was over at 62. "And what happened?" I asked as I tried to hold a pose the instructor called Peaceful Warrior. "I discovered that my life was just beginning. Without him, I could travel to all the places I always wanted to see. I could take painting classes. I could be myself without having to take care of a man who didn't value me." After class, several women invited me for coffee. For the first time in weeks, I found myself genuinely laughing as I listened to their stories and shared some of my own. It was liberating to be with people who didn't know me as Mark's mother or Robert's wife. Here I was, simply Marlene. That night, I called David to tell him about my day. "Mom, you sound different," he told me. "You sound calmer." "I feel different, son. It's strange. In the midst of all this nightmare, I'm starting to discover parts of myself that I had forgotten existed." "I'm glad to hear that. And Mom, there's something else I want to tell you. I spoke with the social worker in charge of the grandchildren. She says Liam has been asking if he can write you a letter." My heart sped up. "A letter?" "Yes. Apparently they told him you're traveling, and he wants to send you a letter to let you know he misses you." "Of course he can write to me," I replied immediately. "Tell him his grandma loves him more than anything in the world." 3 days later, I received a small envelope with my name written in the clumsy handwriting of an 8-year-old. Inside was a drawing of a house with a gray-haired lady standing at the door, surrounded by flowers. At the bottom, in large, uneven letters, it said, "To the bravest grandma in the world, I love you, Liam." I cried for 20 minutes holding that drawing. Not tears of sadness, but tears of an emotion I didn't know how to name. It was love mixed with determination, sadness mixed with hope. That afternoon, I decided to write him a reply letter. My dearest Liam, your drawing is the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time. I have it taped to my bedroom wall, and every morning I wake up looking at it. I want you to know that your grandma is fine. I'm in a very beautiful place, full of flowers and birds, learning new things and meeting new friends. But every day I think of you and Lily, and I miss you very much. I know things are confusing right now. I know you don't understand why Dad and Mom aren't home and why I'm not there either. But I want you to know something very important. None of what's happening is your fault or Lily's fault. Adults sometimes make very big mistakes, and those mistakes have consequences. Your dad made some mistakes, my love. Mistakes that hurt a lot of people, including me. But that doesn't mean I stop loving him or that I stop loving you. When it's safe for everyone, we'll see each other again. In the meantime, I want you to be strong, to take care of your little sister, and to remember that your grandma loves you more than all the stars in the sky. Your brave grandma, Marlene. After sending the letter, I sat in Brenda's garden, and for the first time since I arrived in Arizona, I thought seriously about the future, not just about when I could go home, but about what kind of life I wanted to build when all this was over. Did I want to keep living in the same house where Mark had threatened me? Did I want to keep the same routines I had before, or was this an opportunity to completely reinvent myself? Brenda, I said to my sister during dinner, do you think I'm too old to start a new life? She looked at me with a smile that reminded me of our mother. Sister, as long as you have breath in your lungs, you're never too old to start over. The question is, what kind of new life do you want to build? That night, for the first time in a long time, I stayed awake, not out of fear or anxiety, but out of excitement. Ideas and possibilities rushed through my mind like rivers after a storm. Maybe this crisis had been exactly what I needed to wake up from the automatic life I had been living. Maybe, just maybe, the best of my life was yet to come. 2 months after arriving in Arizona, I received the call that would change everything again. It was David, but this time his voice sounded different, lighter, almost joyful. Mom, I have extraordinary news. They arrested the leader of the criminal organization. With Mark's cooperation and other witnesses, they managed to dismantle the entire illegal loan network. The prosecutor says the threats against our family have officially ended. I sat heavily on Brenda's living room sofa, feeling a tension that had been on my shoulders for months finally release. That means I can go home? You can go back whenever you want, Mom, but before you make that decision, there's something else you need to know. David paused. Mark is going to plead guilty to all charges. His lawyer negotiated a deal, 5 years in prison, in exchange for his full cooperation. 5 years, I repeated, letting the reality sink in. My grandchildren are going to grow up without their father. Mom, there's something else. Sarah also pleaded guilty, but her sentence is shorter because Mark initiated everything. She's going to be released in 18 months. Social services are evaluating if she can regain custody of the children when she gets out. The idea that Sarah could have my grandchildren again filled me with panic. David, that woman planned to rob me for months. How can they even consider giving her custody? I'm worried too, which is why I want to talk to you about something. Sarah's parents are elderly and are struggling to care for Liam and Lily. They asked me if you would be interested in applying for temporary custody. The world stopped around me. Custody of my grandchildren. Yes, Mom. Legally, you have the right to apply for it as their grandmother. And given the circumstances, I think you have an excellent chance of getting it, at least until Mark gets out of prison. After hanging up, I sat in Brenda's garden for hours, watching the sun set behind the desert mountains. The idea of raising my grandchildren at 65 years old was terrifying and exciting at the same time. What are you going to do? Brenda asked, sitting next to me with 2 glasses of lemonade. I don't know if I have the energy to raise 2 children at my age, I admitted. Liam is 8 and Lily is barely 5. They're going to need so much love, stability, time, patience. Sister, do you think there's anyone in the world who can give them more love than you? She was right. Despite everything that had happened, despite the pain Mark had caused me, my grandchildren were still the light of my eyes. They were not to blame for their parents' terrible decisions. That night, I called David. I want to apply for custody, I told him without preamble. What do I have to do? I've already started preparing the documents, my son replied, with an audible smile in his voice. I knew that would be your answer. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, legal documents, and planning. I had to decide where to live, whether to return to my old house, to the city, or to look for something new. I also had to think about schools, routines, how to explain to the children what had happened to their parents. Marlene, Rose told me during our yoga class, have you considered moving here permanently? There are excellent schools in the area, and you already have a support network built. The idea hadn't occurred to me, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. In Arizona, I had found a version of myself I didn't know existed. I was more independent, more confident, freer. Why go back to the city where everything would remind me of the trauma I had experienced? That afternoon, I called David to discuss the possibility. I think it's a brilliant idea, Mom. A new beginning for you and for the grandchildren. Besides, I can handle the sale of your house from here and transfer the funds for you to buy something there. 3 weeks later, I was signing documents in a family courthouse, officially applying for temporary custody of Liam and Lily. The judge, an older man with kind eyes, reviewed my file carefully. Mrs. Marlene, he finally told me, I see that you were a victim of an attempted robbery by these children's father. Are you sure you can separate that traumatic experience from your responsibility as a caregiver? Your Honor, I replied with a voice firmer than I expected. What Mark did to me was unforgivable, but these children are innocent. They need stability, love, and a safe home. I can give them those things. And are you prepared for the challenges of raising children at your age? I'm 65, not 95. I'm in good health, I have stable financial resources, and a solid support network. But more importantly, I have unconditional love for these children. The judge smiled. Temporary custody granted for a period of 2 years, subject to periodic reviews. When I left the courthouse, I immediately called Brenda. I got it. They're coming to live with me. Congratulations, sister. Now we're really going to need a bigger house. That same afternoon, we started looking for houses. I wanted something with a large yard where the children could play, close to a good school, but also close to Brenda and my new friends. After seeing 5 properties, we found the perfect one. A 3-bedroom house with a small pool, a garden full of fruit trees, and a beautiful view of the mountains. It's perfect, I murmured as I walked through the empty rooms, imagining where I would put the furniture, where the grandchildren would do their homework, where we would have our family dinners. 2 weeks later, David arrived with Liam and Lily. He had prepared them for the meeting, explaining that they were going to live with me for a while their parents sorted out some problems. When I saw my grandchildren get out of the car, my heart almost exploded with emotion. Liam had grown and looked more serious, more mature than an 8-year-old should. Lily hid behind her brother with her enormous brown eyes, full of confusion. "Grandma!" Liam shouted, running towards me. I hugged him so tightly I thought I was going to break him. Lily approached more slowly, but when I knelt down to her height, she threw herself into my arms. "Are we going to live with you forever, Grandma?" Lily asked me in her sweet little voice. "You're going to live with me as long as necessary, my love, and we're going to be very happy together." That first night, after settling the children into their new rooms, I sat in my new living room and watched the city lights spread out towards the desert through the window. 3 months ago, I was a terrified woman hiding in a bathroom while her own son tried to break down the door to rob her. Now I was a 65-year-old woman who had started a new life in a new state, who had found new friends and new versions of herself. I was a woman who had survived the most painful betrayal imaginable and had emerged not only intact, but transformed. But more importantly, now I was the guardian of 2 small lives that depended on her to heal, grow, and learn that the world, despite everything, could be a safe and loving place. As I prepared for bed in my new house, in my new life, I heard Liam reading a story to Lily in the next room. Their childish voices were confirmation that I had made the right decision. Everything I had lost, my security, my trust in my family, my previous life, had been replaced by something much more valuable. A second chance to raise the next generation, this time with all the wisdom that only comes after surviving the worst. A year after Liam and Lily came to live with me, I received a letter I didn't expect. It was from Mark, written from prison in handwriting I barely recognized. I trembled as I opened it, not knowing if I wanted to read what he had to say after so long. Dear Mom, I know I don't deserve for you to read this letter, but I need to try to tell you some things I've been thinking about all these months in prison. First, I know that I'm sorry will never be enough for what I did to you. There are no words in English or in any language that can repair the damage I caused you. In therapy, I've been working to understand how I came to become the person who is capable of threatening his own mother. I'm not looking for excuses, Mom. I'm just trying to understand so I can change. They told me you have custody of Liam and Lily and that they moved in with you in Arizona. At first, I felt rage. I thought you were taking them away from me as revenge, but then I realized something. They are better off with you than with me. They always were better off with you. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I want you to know that I voluntarily waive my custody rights. I want you to have permanent custody when I get out of here. My children need stability. They need unconditional love. They need someone they can completely trust. That person is you, not me. I hope that someday, when I'm a different man, you can forgive me. I don't expect you to forget, nor do I expect us to have the relationship we had before. I just hope that someday you can look at me and see someone who deserves a second chance. Give my children a kiss. Tell them Dad loves them and that he's working very hard to become someone they can be proud of someday. Your repentant son, Mark. I cried after reading that letter. Not tears of immediate forgiveness, but tears of relief mixed with deep sadness. It was the first time Mark had completely taken responsibility for his actions without blaming anyone else. It was the first time he had put his children's needs above his own. That afternoon, during our daily walk in the desert, I told Brenda about the letter. "What do you feel?" she asked me, as we watched Liam and Lily chase lizards among the cacti. "I feel that maybe somewhere deep down my real son still exists, but I also feel that it's too late for many things." "And what are you going to do with the letter?" "I'm going to keep it. Maybe someday when the children are older, they'll want to read it. They'll want to understand that their father truly repented." The following months passed in a beautiful and chaotic routine that only families with children know. Liam had adapted perfectly to his new school and had made several friends. Lily had completely lost her initial shyness and was now a little explorer who turned every day into an adventure. I had developed a resilience I didn't know I had. Getting up at 6 in the morning to prepare breakfasts and lunches, driving to school, helping with homework, taking them to extracurricular activities, reading bedtime stories. It was exhausting and energizing at the same time. "Grandma," Liam said to me one night as I tucked him into bed, "when are Dad and Mom coming back?" It was a question I had been expecting and dreading. "Your dad is going to be in a special place for a while longer, my love. He's learning important things to be a better person. And Mom, your mom is coming out soon, but the judges decided it's better for you to stay with me for now." "Are you sad about that?" Liam thought for a moment. "A little bit, but I also like living with you. I feel safe here." Those words both broke and healed my heart at the same time. This 9-year-old child had learned the difference between feeling safe and not feeling safe. He had lived enough chaos to value stability. 6 months later, Sarah was released from prison. Her first action was to request supervised visits with the children. The judge approved them, 1 hour every 2 weeks in the presence of a social worker. The first visit was heartbreaking. Lily cried and clung to my leg when she saw her mom. Liam was more controlled, but I could see the tension in his small shoulders. Sarah looked different, thinner, with shorter hair, with a humility in her eyes that I had never seen before. "Hello, my loves," she said with a broken voice. "Mommy missed you so much." After the visit, Liam asked me a question that left me speechless. "Grandma, why did Dad and Mom do bad things? Are we going to do bad things when we grow up too?" I sat with him in the garden under our favorite peach tree. "My love, sometimes adults make very bad decisions when they're scared or desperate, but that doesn't mean you're going to do the same. You're going to grow up learning the difference between right and wrong." How do we know the difference? When you have to make a decision, you ask yourself, is this going to hurt someone? Is this honest? Is this what someone who truly loves would do? If the answers are good, it's probably the right decision. As the months passed, I began to notice changes in myself that surprised me. I had more energy than ever, more purpose, more joy. Yoga classes had been replaced by soccer games in the yard. Quiet reading afternoons had been replaced by homework sessions full of laughter and frustrations. Silent dinners had been replaced by chaotic conversations where everyone talked at once. "Grandma," Lily said to me one afternoon as we baked cookies together, "were you happy before we came to live with you?" The question took me by surprise. "Why do you ask me that, my love?" "Because now you laugh a lot more, and you sing when you cook, and sometimes I see you dancing when you clean the house." She was right. Without realizing it, I had become a more vibrant version of myself. Raising my grandchildren had brought me back to life in a way I didn't expect. That night, after putting the children to bed, I sat on my back porch and reflected on the journey I had traveled. 18 months ago, I was a woman living a quiet, predictable, somewhat solitary life. I was a widow who had accepted that her best years were behind her. Now I was a 66-year-old woman who woke up every day with purpose, who had enormous responsibilities and even greater rewards. I was a woman who had survived the betrayal of her own son and had emerged not only intact, but transformed. My phone rang. It was David calling for his weekly check-in. "How are you, Mom? How are the kids?" "We're good, son. Better than good. We're complete." "I'm so glad to hear that. And Mom, there's something I want to tell you. I'm proud of you, incredibly proud." "Why?" "Because you took the most terrible situation imaginable and turned it into something beautiful. Because you gave those children exactly what they needed. Because you gave yourself a second chance to be happy." After hanging up, I sat under the desert stars, listening to the soft sounds of my grandchildren sleeping in their rooms. In the silence of the night, I could hear something I had been too busy to notice during the day, the sound of my own heart beating strong and steady, full of purpose and gratitude. The woman who had walked into that family dinner 18 months ago had been a victim waiting for something bad to happen to her. The woman sitting on this porch was someone completely different. She was a survivor who had turned her pain into power, her trauma into transformation, her loss into gain. And for the first time in a long time, when I thought about the future, I didn't feel fear. I felt anticipation because I knew that no matter what came, I had the strength to face it. And more importantly, I had the love of two little people who had brought me back the joy of living. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story. If you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video, and subscribe to my channel, there are many more waiting for you. Big hugs and see you next time.